Thank you for joining us and welcome to this edition of Liz Collin Reports, a place for truth and meaningful Minnesota conversations. On the podcast, we have Lor Xiong in studio. She is running for Congress in Minnesota's 4th District. May, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Liz, for having me.
We know that you have your eyes set on taking on Betty McCollum this November. Of course, we have the primary next week to get through first, but you took a big trip just last week, and that was to the U.S.-Mexico border. And we wanted to bring you in to talk about that experience. You also had some great video, some great pictures that we're going to share too. But why is that a trip that you wanted to make, May?
Well, it's a very important trip because we hear a lot about the border crisis. And I want to just see for myself to see what's happening down there, especially being able to go and talk to the locals to see what they're experiencing.
Started, putting up the wall, and then looks like they finished, and now we're like just where we began, and then people are going to see it's not finished. We have a different administration, so they might feel like instead of having like a couple of hundred or 1,000, we're going to have 100,000 people coming in because we just might feel that the gates are open.
And I know that there's a lot of crimes are, being committed. And just last month, they arrested 2 high-profile criminals that came into St. Paul. And so, and there's just a lot of drug trafficking and coming to Minnesota, also human trafficking too. So I thought it was very important for me to go down to the border to see some of the issues that the locals are going through, and especially talking to Border Patrols. And
we'll get to some of those issues here in a moment, but just to kind of get our listeners and our viewers up to speed, you're in Progreso, Texas, is where you were, and you had your staff person as your photographer there. And this is near Reynosa, Mexico. So these are people who've been experiencing some of this for years. But how bad is it?
Well, it is pretty bad. Talking to the locals, they're very scared, because a lot of times illegals coming and go into their private properties.
Like a friend of mine lives further close to the river. They rig into his car to hide, or under his house. It's a frame house. They hide under the house. So he has to lock himself in and get weapons ready, because you never know. And calling Border Patrol, or he calls me to call him because he's afraid to make phone calls out of his house.
Vandalizing their properties, especially like destroying their cars and to hide inside the car, or break their fences. It's just a lot of vandalism down there, and these are things that they have to use their own money to fix after these vandalism.
And you also had a pretty candid conversation with a Border Patrol agent while you were there, May.
I'm here down at the southern border, and I just spoke to a Border Patrol, and he said that they're understaffed and it's really hard to control the border or to have enough staff to apprehend illegals that are coming here on a daily basis. So I can see that there's a crisis down here because we don't have enough staff. Just like law enforcement, we don't have enough police officers to do their job and to protect our communities.
It's very interesting, and it's really sad that the Border Patrols, they don't have enough staff right now. He told me that for their boundary, there's only 3 of them to patrol that area and to secure that area. And so they're very lucky that they do have the local law enforcement and state troopers to help them when their hands are tied. However, when there's a few groups that are crossing over, it's very hard for them to apprehend all of them. And the Border Patrol that I spoke to said that every shift, they apprehend at least 20 to 30 illegals.
And this is just among 2 or 3 officers that are there for this stretch of land.
Correct. And if you look at the videos and the pictures, you can see that there's like a huge open gap there. And during the previous administration, they're supposed to put a tall gate.
So some kind of barrier to keep them out. And that's what I think is interesting too. You brought up the topic of the wall to everyone you spoke to. What did they say?
Well, they said, it's important for us to finish the wall. It will protect all the locals there. It will also deter a lot of the illegals trying to cross over, because right now, with that open space, it's just, it's very easy to access and cross over to our side.
And you can see for yourself these gaping holes. You're sort of walking along, and you can easily see how someone's allowed to enter.
Right. So we saw a lot of construction materials for the walls that are just left there since the administration now has put a halt to finishing the wall.
And you also had a candid conversation with folks about Title 42.
Yes. So they said that when Title 42 was in place, it really helped the borders, and it also helped, to stop, at least to slow down the illegals crossing over. But now that that has been lifted, there's just a lot of people coming over.
So going back to that then, solutions, if you are elected in November to serve in District 4, what would you do in Congress to try to relieve the situation down south?
Well, I think that we really need to think about putting in more border patrols, and definitely Title 42, we need to reinstate that. That's very important. I felt like the locals thought that that was very, that helped them a lot. And so let's reinstate that for them. It's for their safety, and it's for the safety of our country.
And you brought this up at the beginning, May, about maybe this seems like this is, thousands of miles from us in Minnesota. But from the numbers we could find, it's about 100,000 illegal immigrants. 50% are from Mexico in Minnesota. But when you're talking about fentanyl coming across the border, you're saying sex trafficking. These are concerns we all should have in this state, you believe?
Oh, absolutely, because we know that, those are some of the things that are impacting our communities and families in Minnesota here. And so even though the southern border it's far away from us, it's still, the issues are also impacting our communities, and we have to, do something about it. And we know that, Title 42 will help with that, slow down illegal immigrants, and also help with border patrols.
What's interesting here is your own story. Your mom fled communist rule while she was pregnant with you. The story is really remarkable, basically fighting for survival in that trip. Your older sister, I know, lost her life doing so. So when people say to you, well, how can you have the outlook you do at the southern border with your own personal experience, what do you say?
I think that if they follow the process, they can be part of the American economic growth and, having better opportunities versus coming here illegally. Even, all the interviews that I talked to, the locals, they're all, from Mexico, but they came here legally. And they don't like how the illegals are coming here. And they want them to follow our immigration policy, follow the process, because it's not fair for the ones that are trying to get to this country and using our, immigration policy, and they're, going through the process. They have to wait, a long time to get accepted, and so it's not fair for them.
Even your personal story, it was 8 years before you came to Minnesota.
Right. We did. We have to go through the process of getting our, legal paperwork to get to this country. And so it is not, an easy process, but I think that when I get into office, I think that it's something that worth looking at is the immigration policy to really help with these immigrants who wants to come to this country.
What I'm struck by is your family's commitment to service. Your father served in the military. You have 2 sons in the military. What was it for you that made you want to hopefully serve in this way? Even
with a school closing, it was impacting a lot of my students, especially students of color and students who are trying to learn English. And I had to go from home to home to help the parents to navigate their iPads so they could be online and do their homework. And I also remember that my daughter, she was 16 at that time, she works at Cut Foods. And I dropped her off, and then maybe 30 minutes later she called me and say, Mom, come pick me up right now. They're boarding up the store. They heard that rioters and looters are coming here, and it's like they're like maybe 15, 20 minutes away. I had to rush back and pick her up, and it was very, very scary. It was a very scary phone call as a mother. And so just thinking back, my son was a National Guard. He was out there, trying to protect Minnesota. And then my youngest son was, stationed in Jacksonville protecting the world, and I thought, well, what can their mom do? Because I can't just sit here and wait for a miracle, and so I can protect America. And so that's when I decided that I want to run for Congress to help pass policies and make good decisions in Washington, D.C. for my constituents in CD4.
And talking about your constituents a little bit more, May, the Twin Cities metro area is home to the largest concentration of Hmong in America. And I follow you on social media, and you are really involved in the community, taking these conversations, having these difficult conversations with your community. I'm kind of wondering their top concerns. I mean, I know you mentioned some lockdowns and such, but what do you hear from small business owners in that community, students, teachers in that community?
So I spoke not to just the Hmong community, but the Karen, the Somali, the Black, the Latino, all these communities. And every single time, it's safety. Crime is on the rise, and they're scared. And so this is, something that I also see with my own eyes, and have a lot of families that are experiencing, vandalism, car theft, and you name it, in St. Paul here.
So District 4 covers nearly all of Ramsey County, part of Washington County, all of St. Paul, of course, and most of its suburbs. But the DFL has held that seat now since 1949. Do you think it can be different now, and how so?
Yep. I believe it's 1944. So I've been telling people, you know what? They've been in this seat longer than the Hmong have been in this country. And we haven't really seen any changes, especially the last 20 years with Betty McCollum being in this seat. She hasn't really made any impact or difference. This is the time where we need a leader who's going to be vocal, who is going to, really speak for the people and make a difference in the district.
And we did reach out to Betty McCollum's campaign for her take on the border. We wanted to know why she hasn't made a recent trip there or ask if she intends to do so. We also wanted to know her take on President Biden's kind of quiet finishing of the border around Yuma, Arizona. And just want to let our listeners know that we did not hear back. But that was something you also wanted to point out, that this administration has kind of toggled back and forth on this issue, and some of this wall is now being constructed.
Right. The Betty Biden administration, they're more concerned about the Ukraine borders versus the border in America.
Well, we certainly wish you luck, and thank you so much for coming in today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Again, May Lor Xiong. And that will do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify or any other podcast platform. We will see you next time.